Welcome, everyone. This is the Progressive Minds Show. My name is Senna, aka Alinko. We have been out for a little bit for the past 2 weeks. I think we missed you all, and I'm sure you missed us because this is the number one community building show. Here is where we gather to discuss issues that are pertaining to our communities, issues that are related to the African diaspora, cultural issues, topics, and conversations that can make us better. This evening, we have one for you. It is, why do we call Africa, in Africa, why do we call some traditional rulers kings and others chief? Today is March 7th, 2023. It is Tuesday, and we're going to be talking to Dr. Apostle Kanayo Odeluga. He is here in the studio. We're going to go straight into the discussion this evening. Apostle Dr. Odeluga, which one? Should I go or should I go Apostle? Which one?
No. You just Kanayo Odeluga. You see, titles are not important.
We are blessed to have you today. I know we've been wanting to have this conversation. Last year when we did the exchange ceremony where we brought a king from Ghana to crown Jesse Jackson, that was when we met you. I met you direct at WVON.
That's
and
right.
You were inquiring about what we're doing. And I told you through our conversation, you talked about, you enlightened me a little bit about this king and chief thing. Because all my life, I've known chiefs, and we call in Ghana and West Africa, we call our traditional leaders chiefs. Mm-hmm. And you said, no, there's something wrong with that. That wasn't the case. So today we are privileged to have you to first of all, tell us what you do as a person, who you are, a brief background, and then we can go into the conversation.
Yes. By God's grace, I'm a father, the husband of one wife. I practice medicine, but I'm also a pastor with Christ Oasis Ministries. For those of you who live in the south suburbs, you are always welcome to join us for fellowship on Sundays. And that's at 820 California Avenue in Dalton, Illinois, is the Christ Oasis Tabernacle. You can always stop by and have some fun and fellowship.
Thank you. That said, let's dive into it.
Yeah.
How did this whole thing started? Because before politics or before the European came to Africa, we were just kings. So how did this chief thing started?
Yeah, so the truth of the matter is that every society had its own way of organizing itself.
Okay.
And so in various ethnicities within Africa, because Africa is not monolithic, every African community, every African society that have risen throughout history, they have always found a way to name whoever they put as a leader. And they have had their own political systems. You know, some have monarchy, some have egalitarian societies. Like among the Igbos, there were no kings. It was a village democracy that was also that leaned on the elders as governing councils or people who gather to make decisions on behalf of the community. But I know that all throughout history, Africans have had the pharaohs. You could call them what the Europeans would call kings. They had authority, they had administrative structures, and they ran their empires. And empires meaning they have spread across many ethnicities, many groups, and many nationalities that they brought under them. The same with, for example, the Ghana Empire, which of course you know that was towards the western parts of Africa, in the part of West Africa. When he was in his power, its leader was called Ghana. It was Wagadu Empire, but his leader was called Ghana. Now, Wagadu. You know, the Ashantis had Ashanti Hene.
Yeah.
They didn't call it, there was nothing like king. He was Ashanti Hene. They had a title. Now, why did we begin to get into this? Who is a king, who is a chief, who is a king, who is a chief? Now, when the Europeans began their expeditions across the globe to begin colonization, one of the things that the Spaniards, and actually including the Portuguese, began to show is that they wanted to identify who was the boss. And if they could control the boss, then they can control the people. So when they came to Africa, if they came to among the Ashantis, they want to hear, oh, is this the Ashanti Hene? Or you call him, so somebody, maybe some translator will say, oh, he's like, oh, like king. Remember, as a monarchy, the empire, the British Empire had what? Kings.
Yes.
So they didn't want anybody to be answering king when they got king. So now what they're going to tell them is, look, Ashanti Hene, you a chief, a paramount chief. So the colonial administration under the British Empire created this nomenclature called paramount chiefs. That is to say, you are just over a tribe, but we are over empires and nations and peoples, and we have power, and so we're on top of you. So that's how they try to subjugate the African leadership under their monarchical leadership. So, and so, for example, among the Igbo, they came to some of the leaders, you see, because the way the Igbos, for example, we built egalitarian societies that is based on one man, one vote. Power belonged to the people. So the people gathered. Village democracy consisted of the community gathers. They will hear arguments regarding an issue, and then the elders will go into a caucus, Iwaizu, and then they come together with a decision, which now the spokesperson for the community is usually the oldest man. And then they have titled men, which if you take a title, meaning you've received that, you accomplished enough and wealthy enough to meet the obligations and the character to support that title, then the village, the community confers you with a title, and that's what you are. That's your title. It has no jurisdiction. You understand? So, so that's how this whole concept of the chiefs were just part of the European destabilization and decharacterization of African nations and African leadership structure.
It's good that you. Thank you so much. It's good that you mentioned this distinction. So it means that the title king and chiefs, title king and chief are European words.
Yes.
You know, to be honest, if you hadn't said it today, I mean, king, yes, but chief, you know, because a lot of Africans actually believe that these are African words, you know, because we have not been educated on this. And so very, very, very glad that you were giving us the insight. And so the kings were giving chiefs just to make the Europeans title king more apparent and feel more authoritative than the others. Now,
and also part of it too was to disrupt the system, because you know most people who were given leadership, let's say within some communities like the Ashanti, you know, in Ghana, some of it is hereditary, so you pass it on along. Now, if any of those leaders did not cooperate with the British government or the French, what do you think what did they do normally? They will quickly find any available individual, confer on them some authority of a chief, and say, oh, you're a paramount, or like they did among the Igbos or within Nigeria, warrant chief. They give you a warrant. And now you can go back to your people and rule them under their mandate, not under the cultural mandate of the people, because every society has a way that they choose their leaders and they confer legitimacy and authority. And so a lot of the people who partnered with the Europeans in destruction, what I call the destabilization and destruction of Africa, were people they propped up, and they had to give them names and nomenclature and give them positions that will seem as if they fit into their own hierarchy and the status symbol, so as to accomplish what they needed to accomplish.
Great point. So let's look at it this way. It doesn't mean that a chief is someone who has a smaller jurisdiction compared to a king in the European monarchy system.
Yes, it depends on what they give you. They give you the warrant, they tell you where you govern. But if you go back, a lot of the people will tell you that they didn't have those kinds of structures before.
So in essence, as Africans, we had tribes, different tribes that made up, that made kingdoms, and then different tribes that made kingdoms, and all these tribes and larger regions, you know, and I'll say geographical lands areas. Would you say that we all had different titles as to who our traditional leaders were. We, like you said, the Ashantis call it Ohene, the Elwes call it Togbi.
Yes.
The northerners, the northern part, they call it Yana.
Onana, some places.
Onana, yes. The Ashantis call it Nana too. The Gans will say Gamanche.
Yes.
So that is to say that the chiefs, if correct me if I'm wrong, the people we call chiefs in Ghana, Nigeria, in some of the West African countries that practice this, that have these practices, they now we can equally call them kings and not chiefs. Is that correct? The ones we call chiefs now, is it okay to say these are actually kings, but per the structure that was given to us by Europeans, we now call them chiefs?
Now, my thing is, this is my point, that some of the people who call themselves chiefs now have no jurisdiction, meaning they have no land, no geographic area, no administrative structure.
It was imposed on them.
They were people who took a title and had to be, in order to explain away to the within the European context,
right.
Some will say, I'm a chief. I'll give you an example. Within the Igbo, among the Igbos, we have Ozo title, which is an institution, is like a fraternity of men. The women have their own. So if you read Things Fall Apart, Okonkwo took a title and became an Ozo titled man. And when you take a title, it does not mean you are over anybody, other than it's almost like, okay, now you achieved some level of wealth and progress within the community, and they decide that, look, you need to be conferred with an award, a title. You know, you're admitted into the Hall of Fame. Let's say, for example, a lot of those people now will give themselves the title of chief.
Okay.
And then some people will say, oh, no, I'm not just a chief, I'm a high chief, which means I have taken a title higher than you. So the chief, most chiefs, they don't have really any jurisdiction.
Right.
If you're a monarchy, like you said, Nana or Ashanti Hene, or even among in Nigeria, you have the Oba of Benin, or you have the Alafin of Oyo.
Okay.
Those are ancient stools.
Okay.
Ancient stools that have, over the years, or, you know, so like Ezenre, it's over a kingdom, civilization. And these are ancient stools that have had legacies, and they know how people are allowed to come into that. And those have jurisdictions, and they have control over some area.
Okay, so over some area. So
yes, but one of the things you said is tribes. Those are also some of the ways that the Europeans try to denigrate us, making it appear that we're a tribe. A tribe is something that connotes primitivity, lack of insight, not having a structure, you know, people roaming the area. But frankly, there were no tribes in Africa when they came. These were ethnic nationalities that had governed themselves, had means of productions that they control, had systems of government, have ways that they administered their laws and customs and values, and kept peace, and have diplomatic relationships among themselves. So we have nationalities that have distinct cultural identifications and character. Not just tribes, like they say, you know, all these tribes in Africa, we're trying to go and civilize them. No. We had cultural values, we had means of production, we had agricultural processes, healing systems, we had religious practices, and we had every aspect of a civilization, a people who have mastered their environment and are able to administer their affairs and maintain peace in such a way that the populations in West Africa were some of the most highly dense places in the world, which means there were agrarian practices that produced food. We knew how to extract minerals from our soil.
Dr. Kanayo, in that sense, all this, the ones that are these kings or chiefs that were installed properly, would you were installed, but we call them chiefs?
Yes.
Would you say that as Africans, we have to unlearn that and not necessarily refer to them as chiefs, but kings. Would that be right to say?
That's right. In a way, really, we don't need to put any English word to them. You
Mm.
call them who they are.
There you go. There you go.
If you're Nana, you're Nana. Why do we have to say you're a king? King is English. Why do we? You see, and that is part of the challenge Africa is facing. That we're beginning to distinguish ourselves based on who is speaking English, who is speaking Portuguese, or who is speaking French.
Wow.
Why should we? Why we had ways. So if I come to Ghana, I should learn who is the head in Ghana. If it's the Hene, I'll address him as Ashanti Hene.
Right.
If he's Nana, I call him Nana.
Yes.
And if anybody else comes, they address him just like if you come to the United States, you cannot call Biden who he is, which is the president of United States. You cannot call him king. So, but what they did is that they brought us under their own structure in a way that brought confusion and also destroyed the essence and the value, because a lot of the people who now were enforced on Africans by the British did not meet the moral and the character and the cultural definition for leadership in those systems.
Wow. In this case, we have, as Africans, we have come to adopt these names. And I think that per this these two different titles, we accord respect to them based on the titles. And so what are we, so now that we are learning this thing, I have never seen it and known it like this. Even the education just gave us about tribes. We call ourselves tribes, to now learn that we were ethnic nationalities. How do we unlearn some of these things that have been taught us, that have distorted our systems and our traditional ways of life?
It's history. It's going back to re-engaging our past and our history. Yes. You see, the reason why you were called a tribe means that I can violate your sovereignty. So when the Europeans came, they could cross our borders and call themselves explorers. The great travelers and explorers. Now, if an African wants to fly into a hair, they'll ask you for your visa. And then if you try to cross the border as an explorer, you become an illegal alien or you are invading. But tell me which of the Europeans had a visa from the Ghana or from the Ashanti Hene or from the Ga people or from... So they came in and said, you're a tribe. You don't have jurisdiction, you have no boundaries, and you have no protection under international law as a nationality, as a nation state.
Wow. So, Doc, I know we don't have too much time for you today, but there are so many questions that we want to ask. To what extent do African kings and chiefs still hold political and social power in this contemporary society?
To the extent that the people give them the authority and the ability.
Would you say that? Would you say that in these West African countries, they seem to have more relevance than even some political powers or political individuals?
Yes and no. In this wise,
okay.
In most of African nations now, West African countries, we've moved into a new sense of political arrangements called democracy, right? And so within those democratic processes, you're now governed by constitutions. While the former leaders, the traditional ethnic leaders, I'll call them, used to govern based on the cultural morals and values of the people. So today they call them traditional. So they still have relevance to the people because in most nations, people, they embody the heritage and the history and the ancestral roots of the people. And so they carry also some spiritual responsibilities. The Hene has influence, he has power. The Nana, the Ezenri in Anibo has some influence. There are people who still look up to them because they embody what we used to be.
Exactly.
Now, within the political structure, they had been emasculated, partly because that system was also used to subjugate us. Remember, a lot of the people who were engaged in the trafficking of Africans were some of these so-called chiefs and kings. And so they gained power, and they got their cannon guns, they got their ammunitions, they got equipped by the European merchants, and so they became part of the African problem, in the sense that they took the resources of the land from the people and then they sold it to the Europeans. And in some communities today, you find people dealing with China, dealing with the Europeans, selling land, giving titles away, giving resources and mines and minerals, things that they still have that are common community value, resources that are still being misappropriated by the so-called kings and chiefs. Again, at a time that most Africans no longer have a way of holding them accountable.
It is very powerful what you're saying. It's unfortunate that we don't have a lot of time to dive into so many of the questions that we have, and also from our audience. But how would you say, within the few minutes that we have available, what would you say has been the contribution of our traditional rulers? Now I learn not to call them kings and queens, because I'm just going to go by Ohene, Nana, Togbi, Gamanche, and Yana from the Ghanaian perspective. And I think that this is a great lesson learned. How have they contributed to our moral fiber of the African society? Because a lot of people say, oh, so democracy, Africa is not developing because we have not fully embraced democracy. Some too are saying that we have to go back to our traditional ways, which then has a lot to do with our traditional rulers. So what is their contribution and their impact to the African society?
It does represent who we used to be. They represent something in our past.
Do you think that they've transformed us as a people and made us better? Their role in our societies, African.
Yes, because they embody our values. Really, a lot of, if you look at the way our ancestors, remember, these were things that we did without any input. For years, Africa was a nascent place where we developed civilizations that were exported out of Africa.
Yeah.
We taught the world so many things. And then all of a sudden, we had to unlearn and acquire some of the value systems that actually were detrimental to us.
You said we exported civilization. Can you explain that?
For example, the Egyptian civilization is at the root of the global civilization. The thoughts, the values that were, yes, Timbuktu, when he was an academic center, they had wisdom, they had understanding of literature, they had of the arts, of arithmetic, of astrology, that were also part of what the Europeans came to learn.
And you were talking about Timbuktu, which is a kingdom, an ancient kingdom in Africa.
That's right, a city-state. And so also when the Ghana Empire ran, remember, Mansa Musa, when he traveled to Mecca on pilgrimage, he was building mosques all over the trail, all the way to Arabia.
Yeah.
And we know today that the kings of Mali, some of those Malian leaders, sent expeditions to the New World, and actually flotillas of sheep, boats and sheep, that went to the New World before Christopher Columbus came down here. So those leaders have, as they manage the resources of the people, did contribute to the growth and development of those civilizations. And so long as we look to them and some of the history that they embody, I mean, look at England, for example. Do you know how much the monarchy contributes to the GDP? Just people who go there to see the Buckingham Palace.
Wow.
The tourism they bring, the people who gather around their festivities and ceremonies. What if we put our traditional rulers in the same stead? There
you go.
They will bring a lot of value to people coming to find out our way of life. Nobody comes. You see, that is part of Africa's problem. We always try to imitate somebody else instead of being who we are, so that people will come and see us for who we are.
Yeah. Imagine that. Imagine people coming to see our traditional rulers, the way they live, the way they govern, and our ways.
That's right, learning their ways. These are ancient ideas with which they had governed and passed down the line. And there are thoughts, and if you delve into the ceremonies that are done they will tell you why it's done.
Exactly.
And sometimes, as Christian, the church may condemn some of these things as being paganistic because of part of European influence in our own theology. But forgetting, I mean, we saw Britain go through a burial ceremony for the funeral ceremonies for Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Imagine any of our traditional rulers if we had to pass throughout the whole traditions of burying them. It's a litany of activities, and many people will say, "Oh, that's paganistic."
Yes.
Oh, that's paganistic. But you saw them change clothes. You saw them visit shrines or where they're called. This has to happen at this city, at this place. Because of this, they had to go to Scotland. They had to go to Wales. They had to be in England, all because there were ceremonies that had to be done to be able to fully rest her crown and be able so that Charles can take it. If you go back and ask the Ashantis, how do you bring somebody to the stool and how do you retire them? There is a ceremony. But when Africans want to do it, people kind of like look at it as, all these paganistic things. They believe the stool fell from the heaven. That's what they believe.
Yeah.
And you got to hear them out.
No, you're right. Let's take this comment. I know our time is up. So Shobi says no difference because, okay, so he used some graphic works, but so I think he says their mindset is not right, and they think inside the box. So-called kings and chiefs with no foresight, no vision for their towns and villages, let alone their citizens, raised to the power, cause majority of them. Basically, what he's trying to say is that our kings and chiefs somewhat have lost their ways, and they are not governing as you narrated in before pre-colonialism.
No, first of all, the young man that is asking the question, I assume it is a young man.
Yes.
What does he know about the history of those leaders in his community? What was he taught to be able to judge where they are and why they were supposed to be? And that's what I'm really asking Africans. Get back to knowing yourself. Study the history of your community. In fact, in our church, this last Black History Month, I challenged every family. I say, teach your children your family history. It's good to study Martin Luther King. It's good to talk about Frederick Douglass, Ida B. Wells, Sojourner of Truth. Let's talk about, the Black Moses, what's her name?
Marcus Garvey?
Marcus Garvey, all these people, we can study them. But what about your great-grandfather? What about your great-great-great-grandfather? Who was your great-great-great-grandmother? What did she do? How did she grow up? What were some of her accomplishments? What were the things they went through? How did they accomplish what they accomplished for you to be here? So the question that I pose to the young man is, before you criticize that chief, the traditional ruler, go back and find out how was this office established? And what was the way they used to govern? And when did it change? And why did it change? And how do you restore it back to its originality? That is the challenge for our generation.
That is the challenge for our generation. I've always asked myself, and I've always questioned some friends. And the truth of the matter, the truth of the matter is that a lot of Africans, both educated, not educated, old, young, do not know past our immediate villages.
Yes.
Like the towns and villages that we know our grandfathers are from. Once we leave the city, the places we go, a lot of us don't know beyond that.
Yes.
And this is the hard truth. And so you were spot on. We have to search and go deeper. Yes. And I think it will bring a lot of revelation to us. Thank you so much, Dr. Kanayo Deluga. I know our time is up. I know we were supposed to go to 7, but you have some family duties to attend to. We hope to get you back as we are on this journey to learn about ourselves as Africans. We hope to have you on the show again. Can you please go ahead and give us the name of your church, your address, if you put people to attend?
It is Christ Oasis Ministries at the Oasis Tabernacle. Is situated at 820 California Avenue in Dalton, and our services begin at 10 a.m. every Sunday. We'll love to have you. We'll love to have you come fellowship with us, and we can dig more deep into who we are and what God is doing among his people at this time. Thank you so much. Progressive Mind, Alinko, you're the best.
Thank you, Dr. Deluga. I know you plugged in your church information, but your last words to every African that is watching this show or would watch this show afterwards.
Know your history.
There you go.
It belongs to you, is your story, and you are here because there's a story behind you.
Mm.
The reason why we're here, Alinko, is because there's a story behind us. And that story is the story that God has written.
Mm.
And let nobody take it from you, because it's your story. And you can tell it with power, with confidence, and you don't have to make apologies for it. Let everybody else tell their own story. And your story is not, nobody's story is better than your story, because it's your story. It's the story of how you overcame, the story of how your people prevailed, the story of how your people got to where they are, and accomplishments across. You see, the unfortunate thing is that so many of our fathers and our mothers did great things in their time that we are not aware of, and we can build off of it because we don't bother to go back. They tell you they are primitive, they're tribes. You say all those tribes. And then, so because I now use an iPhone, I think I'm better than my grandfather. No, my grandfather had a loincloth when he left the village to the city and confronted a global trade and was part of the people who transformed themselves from farmers to mercantile economy and dominated it without going to any school. Because he had indigenous knowledge. Our people know how to do things. Before they think about it this way too. Africans came here to the Americas. They weren't trained in Oxford, Yale, Cambridge, Princeton, or Harvard before they went to the farms and did what they did for their masters and made money for them and created wealth. They went straight to the farm. They went straight building houses. They went straight to the tool shed and made tools out of iron. And they built things and they created economies and cities and villages and towns in this land without going to any school because of the knowledge they brought from Africa. They healed themselves. The women delivered babies. Not because they had HMOs, but because we had birth attendants, mothers who knew how to were midwives in Africa. We have healers in Africa who were responsible for the health of the plantation. So we need to know ourselves. We need to find out what we are doing before we get to where we are.
Awesome.
We are not. We didn't come from a nascent civilization like knew nothing, and we had to be taught everything by the British or by the Europeans. No, they learned from us, and they are still learning from us, and they are still taking from us to build up their nations.
Wow, Dr. Kanayo Deluga, I know you deliver anytime now. So you should also know you should also follow him at Straight Talk.
Straight Talk Radio on WVON 1690 AM every Sunday. We're there 7 to 9 p.m.
Yes.
Straight Talk Radio featuring My Community Plan Foundation. So join us and we'll have some fun.
Brilliant. I will track you down. I know you are busy. I'll track you down again. We'll come here and then engage on matters that are concerning now. Thank you so much, Dr. Kanayo Deluga. I know you have some family duties. We appreciate your time. We shall definitely be in touch.
Thanks. Keep up the good work, my brother.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Okay. All right, that was Dr. Kanayo. We will take a short break. When we come back, the show will continue on the Progressive Mind Show.
There is a cry.
Aglo. Aglo Bolingbrook Lighthouse is a network of caring women. We are a dynamic global movement with a single mission to see God's purpose fulfilled on earth as it is in heaven. Our mandate is every nation touched and every heart changed for God. We invite you to our prayer meeting every Saturday and breakfast meeting held every last Saturday of the month from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. via Zoom meeting. For more information, please contact Dickness Rebecca Modi at 630-297-1471 or Reverend George Ofe Ado, our advisor, at 630-414-9505. We look forward to having a refreshing time with you in the Lord. Thank you and stay blessed.
There is a cry in my heart.
Welcome back to the show. And I have just learned my lesson today. I wasn't prepared for this. To be honest, I was just so confident in this chief thing and was ready to find out whether our ancestors were competing against each other and all of that. But to understand that the title chief is not an African dialect or an African language. The word chief is not an African word. It's not an African word. King is not an African word. And so where does it come from? Of course, it's an European word. And how is it that Africans are now using kings and chiefs for our traditional rulers? These practices that we've had from ancient of days, these practices and norms and way of lives that we've kept that build the great civilizations, because everybody knows that Africa is a cradle of civilization. So if we are a cradle, or we were the cradle of civilization, if we built the pyramids, then what system, who were our leaders then? How did we call them? There were no presidents, there were no ministers or prime ministers. And of course, because of our language, they were not kings. They were the names that we will call them in our traditional languages, in our ethnic languages. And I also learned that we were not tribes. We were not tribe people. We were ethical communities or kingdoms. And I so appreciate this show today for myself as an African and as someone who seeks to learn more about my history and about myself. And as you grow, and this is what I tell my professional friends and colleagues and everybody that I come across, especially people that I interact with on a daily basis, also on a consistent basis, Africans and professionals, that the most important thing for us now as grown folks or as educated folks is to do the education of the self, which Dr. Kanayo was talking about. Because if you don't really know your roots and where you're from and what you are about, what is your essence? There has to be a foreknowledge or some insight to where you're coming from. And to some of the conversations that I engage in with friends is that where we're coming from is not necessarily the villages that we are from in Ghana or in South Africa or in Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Uganda, Guinea, or Botswana, Zambia, Mozambique, Congo. Those villages that we're from before we migrated here or traveled to the United States or to anywhere in this world, a lot of us came from the cities. But from the cities, we moved from the village to the cities, or we were born in the cities. But our parents were now from the cities. Most of our parents were born in the villages. We know that. All Africans know that. It doesn't matter which place you live in, the cities in Africa, we're all from the village. And so those villages, we know our grandfathers would live there, some passed away, our uncles and cousins, extended family relatives still live in these houses. And a lot of time, that's all we know about ourselves. And that is why it's very, very important, the conversation we had today. And I'm glad that he mentioned some of these things that I think about and ponder over all the time. that how far do we know ourselves? How far do we know about our own history and about our own culture as Africans? I mean, African Americans and Caribbeans, this is a conversation we can have on a different tangent, on a different day, which is what we do here all the time. But for those of us who come here with all the pride, because we are Africans and we carry all this, you know, we carry our shoulders high because we feel like we are Africa. We have culture. We have the raw culture. We wear beads, we wear all these African made necklaces. Our food, the way we greet, the way we name our children, the way we marry, all of these things. We revel in them. It's common to us. We're birthed in it, and so when we come here and we don't necessarily see others conducting, especially other blacks conducting in themselves in this manner as we Africans would, we feel like they don't have a culture. These are conversations that Africans have within our community all the time. Oh, these people don't have a culture. I used to think so 12 years ago. I had to unlearn that. It's just a fact. It's not that we intentionally want to do that, but it's just the information that was fed us when we were in Africa, and then when we come here too. Because mind you, when we're in Africa, we're not privy to all the stuff you see on ABC, MSNBC, and CNN. CNN, we watch some selected pieces of news that CNN puts out there. We watch CNN International, and it's not always showing the inner city stories, the urban city stories. We're not seeing the real America. We're seeing what we have to see. When we watch movies, it's the glamour. We don't see. We watch Titanic, or you watch Superman, or you watch Batman, and it's all the niceness and the greatness of America or Europe. So you don't get to see the intricacies. And so, and then back in the schools, we are not necessarily educated about necessarily about our African American brothers and how they left us and how the Europeans conducted themselves and how our traditional chiefs, our traditional rulers were involved. We were not taught in detail all of this. And so, but we know for sure that we are from some villages in Africa, and we live in the cities, or some of us actually from the villages directly, and we fly here by whatever means. And so when we get here and we see other blacks not conducting themselves in what we know as tradition and culture, we write them off, or we there's this cold shoulder to that, towards these people a lot of times. And I'm not saying everybody does that, but a lot of Africans do this unintentionally. Like I said, it's just because of our education, the education that was fed us, the information that was given us, and all of that. But as we had discussed earlier, as Dr. Deluga was saying, we have to unlearn some of these things as adults, because now we are privy to a lot of information. Thank God things are changing now. The trend is not like it used to be. If you go to Ghana now, people are more aware of our connection and our history when it comes to African Americans and us and other Africans. People are getting more enlightened because of social media. This is the age of information, so a lot of people are reading and researching. But I think that the numbers can be more. I think that Africans can use social media more to learn about ourselves, because I think that as Africans, we know more about Europeans than ourselves and our history and our culture. Because right from kindergarten, all you read are European books, European textbooks, European stories. I learned about Macbeth and Shakespeare. Okay, King Alexander the Great was a popular figure or story, that you clamor, you want to read that book. I read more European books than African books. That's the truth. And it's so till date, to be honest. I stand for any correction, but that's a story till date. We clamor for more European movies and European ways of doing things than our own culture. Even though we are doing, the youth is getting better, and we're trying to unlearn some of these things that were taught to us. The more we know about who we are, the more we know about where we're from, the more we know about our tradition, our culture, and what it means and why we do them, not just because we partake and we practice it, because that's how we were taught. Our fathers and our mothers say we should do it like this. But the more we understand why, the why behind these things, the more we become better. And when we become better, it will not be for ourselves, but it will be for everybody around us, because our confidence will go up. We will not have to envy. We will not have to jealous others and be envious and always want to clamor for others because we are not satisfied within our souls. Because understanding who you are and where you're from gives you comfortability. It urges you, it helps you to be more satisfied within your soul that it's okay because what you have is good too. The reason why you are clamoring and jealousing and looking at somebody's rather than yours, perhaps is because you feel like theirs is better because you don't understand yours. The opportunity has not been given you to learn and understand yours. You've been put in a place where you have had to learn more about others. So you basically have more insight about what others do and other cultures more than your own culture or more than your own style or what belongs to you. And so there's a tendency for you to want somebody's than yours. But once you begin to understand the power in what you have, or at least begin to uncover what you have, what it stands for, the significance, the history behind it, then it gives you an inner peace and calmness. So you begin to love what you have, which means self-love. Now you don't have to envy somebody. You can appreciate others, you can respect, and which you should love, appreciate, respect, acknowledge others, but be okay in your own skin, in what you wear, where you're from, how you carry yourself. I mean, what you eat, what you wear, and act it, not just say it, but it has to be seen. You have to show it, because Africanism or Pan-Africanism, or you being educated about yourself and your culture and your history, it's not only about the things you wear. It's not the beads we wear. It's not the African traditional clothes that we wear. No, because that's just the surface of it. We are more than that. There is more to it than the beads and the African clothing and the African sandals and the food that we eat. There's more to it. Even the food we eat, there are reasons why we eat those foods. There are historical connotations to some of the meals we eat and some of the leaves that we use to cook. Because some of the leaves you can talk to them. Some of the leaves that we eat are just medicinal. They heal. And I think that I know I'm just mixing it now, right? I'm just a mixed bag. And this is just my commentary after this powerful education that I have learned about what you say, traditional miseducation of okay. So there's some comments here I would like to read, but this is my commentary after what I've learned from who a king is and a chief is in Africa. Why do we even engage in these names? Why do we call them chiefs and kings? Because we should not be calling them kings and chiefs. We should be calling them by their traditional historical titles that our ancestors and our forefathers had in place. And as a Ghanaian, what I know of mine, or as someone who is from this part of Africa, which is now called Ghana, the Ewe people would call their traditional rulers Togbi. It doesn't matter the power or the extent to which their power is, as if the ones that are installed traditionally, they're all Togbis. Yes, their responsibilities and the authorities and powers may differ, but they're all Togbis, which translates to king. If you're from that Kan ethnic group or ethnic community, because I'm not going to be using tribes anymore. They have the Ohene and Nana before we were giving kings and chiefs. So why should we Anywhere we go, we should address them as Ohene or Nana. The Gan Manche is Gan Manche, the Manche of Gan people. Ni Manche stands for king. So all these chiefs and kings, these are not our words, because like Dr. Adeluga was saying, if a monarch from the British Empire goes to Ghana, if let's say King Philip, right, he is not going to be called, they're not going to translate his king or his title, the title king into Ghana language for us to understand so that we can use. No, it's still king. You have to address him by that title. So why do we have to, now just, call our traditional rulers kings and chiefs? Well, I think that this has been a very interesting conversation for myself. This topic here, the kings and chiefs of Africa, what's the difference? I'm glad we've been able to learn it. If you missed that session, that educational piece where Dr. Adeluga was breaking it down, you can always watch the show back on our website, our Facebook channel, which is Progressive Minds, and Facebook page Progressive Minds, and then on our YouTube channel, The Progressive Minds Show. The show, it was going to be there. You can always go back and watch it. And I was making a comment earlier about how Africans come here and we trust and we have confidence in our tradition and our culture, and it gives us the impetus to sometimes have a different attitude towards those who we don't see as Africans, or blacks whom we don't see as Africans. And I think that it is an opportunity for us to teach and learn from each other. So if you feel like somebody doesn't understand your culture or doesn't know your culture or do things the way you do it, it's an opportunity for you to learn theirs and have them learn yours. Ultimately, we have to bring ourselves to a point where we are openly acceptance of people's differences, but willing to share what we have confidently, and also listen and learn from what others have. But we have to go back to our roots. All Black people, no matter where you're from, you're an African. You're from Africa. Those who don't claim to be from Africa, that's okay. But the majority who claim, let's begin to learn our roots. Let's begin to learn our stories by reading and researching and asking and following influential social influencers, social media influencers who are educating and showing what we stand for, who we are. Because like I said, ultimately, when we know more, we become better, we do better, and we treat others better. That's how we become a better society. My name is Sana, aka Alinko. This is the Progressive Mind Show. Every Tuesday from 6 to 8 p.m., we're here discussing pertinent issues that are concerning, that concerns all of us as folks living in the community. We also bridge the gap on this platform. And we have our big event coming up, the exchange ceremony, 24th of June. This year is going to be in three folds. It's going to be a Thursday business meeting. Friday, there's going to be a historic mental health panel discussion. So we urge you to save the date. You have to save the 24th of June. I'm used to saying kings. But anyway, we're speaking English now, so I can say kings. Kings from Africa are coming. The Togbees are coming. Okay, they are coming from Ghana to America. They are journeying here to Chicago to return their brothers and sisters back to the land where they were taken. This is going to be historic. And so you want to mark the 24th of June. And that month is also Juneteenth. So it's all historic. It's all historic. Everything about this event is historic, is unique, is healing, and bottom line is the restoration of the royalty that was taken from our brothers and sisters within the African American and the Caribbean communities. So June 24th, save that date. Thursday business meeting, Friday historic historic, cultural, and mental health panel discussion. And then we will crown it on Saturday by celebrating ourselves. Don't miss it. And make sure you follow our show on Instagram, Facebook, and on YouTube. On Instagram is the Progressive Mind Show. Instagram is the Progressive Mind Show. Facebook is Progressive Minds. And then on YouTube is the Progressive Mind Show. Follow us, like our page, turn on the notifications so each time we come, you can follow us, and also share it. That this is your number one community building platform. Also, your number one diaspora show, the diaspora. This is where we talk more about diaspora. We are the leaders of the diaspora conversation, or the diaspora community, and we are proud to do so. Thank you all for listening. For those who joined us, Dr. Lord Ima, let me just read your comments real quick. Great. This is a good thing. Thank you, Dr. Lord. Naila, I agree. Thank you so much, Naila, for joining. Know someone who would appreciate this information. Please share the live feed. Naila says, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, save the date, June 22nd, June 23rd, and the exchange ceremony, June 24th. Do not miss. You want to tell a friend to save the date, because we are going to be embracing, celebrating humanity through culture during these 3 days. On that note, this coming Sunday, we shall be coming your way again with another interesting topical conversation. Captain Mike has been away too, because he has to take some classes. I think everybody has been taking classes now. Great show, Stephanie Melarni Bello. Thank you, Stephanie, for chiming in. Make sure you share it, Stephanie, and make sure you subscribe to our page on YouTube so we can continue. Oh, my cousin is here. Good show, brother. Ella is my sweet cousin, my sister, my one and only sister, way back from Accra. She used to be a national dance champion in the whole of Ghana. Okay, don't play with this lady. But now she's a prophetess. She preaches. Now she doesn't do all the dancing anymore. She is a great preacher. She has a Facebook channel. If you look her up, Ella Obaya Modi, you can get to her channel. And well, to God be the glory. We shall be here this coming Sunday. This has been your host, Alinko, and we'll see you. Be good. Remember, to whom much is given, much is required. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.